Rachel is asking that you would love to hear my thoughts about defensiveness, generally why parts become defensive, what is going on, and how to explore that in another way. Specifically, when others are critical or aggressive towards me, my defensiveness can arise when I'm not able to be centered, grounded, and open-hearted in my response. And the question, I love it when you have a specific question. The question is, what can be helpful at these times? Okay, so hopefully this will be something that everybody can relate to. I'm going to just say a couple of orienting concepts around defensiveness, okay, and just to sort of ground us in some underlying assumptions. Your defensiveness is a good thing about you. There is nothing wrong with being defensive, okay? It means that your protective system is perceiving a threat and is gearing you up to respond to the threat. In fact, it sometimes helps to change the word defensiveness into self-protectiveness. You have a right and a responsibility to protect your being, your physical being, your emotional being, your spiritual being, your psychological being. You get to be protected, okay? So that's one piece, because I often hear defensiveness being used as if this is a bad thing that you're supposed to dismantle. The way that I suggest we work with our defensiveness is consciously. So we have we're wired for false positives. Hopefully you all know what that means, but if you don't, it means that your survival system is more likely to perceive a threat when there isn't actually one than the other way around, okay? Because that's just good for survival. You'd rather be wrong about how dangerous it was and have it actually be safe than be wrong thinking everything is safe and constantly be wrong about how safe it is and finding out that it's not safe. So we're wired to perceive more threat than is actually out there. So that's just a good thing to know. The other thing that happens is that depending upon each of our past experiences, we will have more sensitivity and vulnerability around particular dynamics that have been hurtful and wounding to us in the past. And to the degree that we haven't fully reclaimed our healing and our internal power and our empowerment and self-trust around those situations, we will feel particularly vulnerable to certain dynamics. And each one of you will have places in your life where you feel like, oh, I get really triggered by, and you could probably make a list. And each of our lists might look really different. And when you make that list, when you make yourself a list, I get really triggered by, and you make your bullet point, that's your personal growth curriculum right there. Okay? You develop your own personal growth curriculum by noticing the places where you are still more vulnerable and less empowered and less able to trust your ability to protect yourself in open-hearted ways. So great, we all have that. We all have our stretch zones. So again, we work with that through a learning and growth and grace and forgiveness and self-loving lens. The practice here is that we don't pathologize it. We don't see it as something bad or wrong that has to be fixed. It's simply the stage of development we're at in different contexts. So that's one way that I would say having some of those assumptions in the background can be supportive when it happens. When it happens, one of the main things, if you're able to do this, is to stay in choicefulness. I'm allowed to flee this situation. I'm allowed to fight back. I'm allowed to freeze up. I'm allowed to honestly express the impact that this is having on me. I'm allowed to ask about what's actually going on for the other person. I have permission, I give myself permission to have any one of those reactions depending upon my assessment of how much energy I have for it, how resourced I feel for it, and what my deepest intention is for this relationship. When my deepest intention is to show up connected and loving and kind because this person matters to me, And I believe that you and I, whoever this person is, we can grapple our way through this, even if it gets messy. I'm more likely to choose interpersonal and relational riskiness, expressing myself honestly, trying a new way of engaging, asking about your experience, trying to stay engaged in interpersonally relational ways to see if we can grapple our way through it. If you said other, you're not that important to me. I don't really care about you. I don't really trust you. I don't really want to be connected to you. Then I would use a defensive strategy to disconnect, because that's what they're good for. And when I decide that it is better for me to disengage from this relationship for my own self-protection and self-care, and I'm doing it from a place of honoring myself without making an enemy image of the other person, if that's possible, which is also part of the practice, then that can be the most self-healing and self-honoring and self-trust building move that you might have available to you.